The university library was unusually quiet that evening, the soft hum of the air conditioning the only sound cutting through the stillness. YN sat at a usual corner table, textbooks and notes spread out in organized chaos. Her pen moved furiously across the page as she worked through yet another practice question, her brow furrowed in concentration. You know, if you keep writing like that, you might just set the paper on fire, came a familiar voice. YN froze mid-sentence, her grip on the pen tightening as she glanced up to find Jungkook leaning casually against a nearby bookshelf, a smirk plastered across his annoyingly perfect face. His dark hair fell effortlessly over his forehead, and his sharp jawline caught the soft glow of the library lights. He was dressed in his usual black hoodie and ripped jeans, the picture of effortless cool. "What do you want, Jungkook?" YN snapped, her voice low but sharp enough to make her irritation clear. "Relax, princess. Just passing by." But he stepped closer, his smirk deepening as he tapped the edge of her notebook with a finger. "Looks like someone's trying a bit too hard to beat me this semester." YN rolled her eyes, pulling her notebook away from him. "Unlike you, some of us actually work for our grades. Don't you have some fan club meeting to attend?" "Ouch." Jungkook feigned a look of hurt, placing a hand over his chest. "But no, I'd much rather be here. Watching you stress over something I'll probably ace without even trying." YN's blood boiled, but she refused to give him the satisfaction of a response. Instead, she focused on her notes, willing herself to ignore the heat of his gaze and the maddening scent of his cologne, fresh, clean, with just a hint of spice. "You're insufferable," she muttered under her breath. "And you're adorable when you're mad." Jungkook shot back, the teasing lilt in his voice sending a shiver down her spine. Before she could retort, he leaned closer, his face mere inches from hers. "See you in class tomorrow, YN. Don't fall behind." With that, he straightened up and walked away, leaving her heart pounding and her mind reeling. Damn him and his stupid confidence. The next day, YN found herself in a different kind of predicament. She was in the middle of a heated debate with Jungkook during a group project meeting when Taehyung walked in. Tall, with his signature tousled hair and a mischievous glint in his eyes, he exuded a quiet charm that turned heads wherever he went. "Sorry I'm late," Taehyung said, flashing an apologetic smile that made YN's heart skip a beat. He slid into the seat next to her, his presence instantly soothing the tension in the room. "Right on time," YN replied, her tone softening in a way that didn't go unnoticed by Jungkook, who'd been leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, watching the exchange with narrowed eyes. As the project progressed, Taehyung's easygoing demeanor and subtle compliments toward YN only seemed to irritate Jungkook more. He'd interject at every opportunity, his tone sharper than usual, his words carrying an edge that made even the others in the group glance at him warily. "All right, let's wrap up for today," YN finally said, standing up and gathering her things. She could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Walk you to your dorm?" Taehyung offered, his voice gentle, his smile warm. YN hesitated, glancing at Jungkook, who now stood by the window, his jaw clenched, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. His dark eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, an unspoken challenge flashing between them. "Sure, Taehyung," she said, forcing a smile as she turned back to him. She couldn't quite explain the pang of guilt that followed, but she brushed it aside as they walked out together. Left alone in the room, Jungkook let out a frustrated sigh, running a hand through his hair. The sight of YN laughing at something Taehyung said as they left made his chest tighten in a way he hated to admit. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to care, but he did. As they walked toward the dorm, a quiet moment lingered between them. Taehyung stole glances at YN, his usual carefree demeanor giving way to something more thoughtful. YN, he said, his voice a little softer than usual. I want you to be sure about everything. Not just with me, but with whatever's going on with Jungkook too. YN looked up at him, confused for a moment. What do you mean? He smiled faintly, though his eyes betrayed a hint of something deeper. I just don't want you to end up caught between people, you know? You deserve someone who can give you clarity, not just confusion. Wyden's heart skipped at his words, sensing the quiet ache in his tone. She didn't know how to respond, the realization of how much Taehyung cared hitting her like a wave. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You deserve that too. Taehyung's smile grew, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. I know, he said, his voice steady, but there was a trace of regret there. I'll be okay. I just hope you find what you're looking for. YN felt a lump in her throat, the unspoken feelings between them too raw to ignore. But before she could say anything more, Taehyung gave her a small, almost sad wave, stepping back as she reached the door. Good night, YN, he said, his voice a little tighter than usual. Good night, Taehyung. As YN entered the dorm, Taehyung lingered for a moment, watching her silhouette disappear into the building. His hands tightened into fists at his sides, the words left unsaid weighing heavily on him. YN couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing inside her. As she sat on her bed that night, the events of the day replayed in her mind. She had always disliked Jungkook's arrogance, his teasing nature, the way he acted like he owned the world. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized there was something else there. Something she couldn't quite put into words. That moment when she laughed with Taehyung had felt nice, but something in her heart tugged when she saw Jungkook's reaction. It had been unexpected, but why did she care so much? The next morning, YN knew she had to clear things up with Taehyung before any more misunderstandings brewed. She found him after class, sitting alone near the campus fountain. Hey, YN said softly, sitting beside him. Taehyung smiled up at her, but there was a slight edge of uncertainty in his eyes. Hey, how's everything? YN hesitated, not sure how to phrase it. I don't want things to be awkward between us. I value your friendship, Taehyung, but I think we need to talk about yesterday. Taehyung raised an eyebrow, looking confused. What do you mean? I don't want to lead you on, she admitted, her voice steady. I care about you, but I don't feel the same way that you do. I don't want to make things weird between us. Taehyung's eyes softened, and a small smile appeared on his lips. I get it, YN. You don't have to worry about me. I just wanted you to know how I felt, but I'll respect it, always. YN felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was glad they had this talk, but at the same time, a knot twisted in her stomach. She was only just beginning to understand the complexities of her own feelings. But before she could think about it further, she noticed someone watching them from a distance. Jungkook. His eyes locked with hers, a storm brewing behind them. He had seen everything. Before YN could react, Jungkook was suddenly at her side, grabbing her wrist with surprising force. We need to talk, he said through clenched teeth, his tone sharp, possessive. Jungkook, let go of me. YN snapped, pulling her wrist away. But Jungkook wasn't listening. His grip tightened for a moment before he tugged her roughly toward an empty narrow road that led to the back of the campus. The air was thick with tension, the quiet alleyway amplifying their footsteps. Jungkook's anger was palpable as he pinned YN against the cold brick wall, his body towering over hers, his hands on either side of her, trapping her in place. YN's heart raced, but her lips curled into a mischievous grin. What's the matter, Chun? Jealous? She teased, her voice playful, but with an undercurrent of defiance. Jungkook's jaw clenched. You think I'm just going to let you walk around with him? His words were low and dangerous, his face inches from hers. You really don't get it, do you? YN's grin faltered, but she didn't back down. What do you want, Jungkook? I want you, he growled, his lips brushing against her ear. I want you to stop pretending like you don't feel it too. You think I don't see how you look at me when we argue? How you look when I get too close? You want to deny it, but you can't. You want me, YN. And I've had enough of you playing games. Her breath hitched, her mind spinning. So, what, you're claiming me now? Is that it? Jungkook's eyes darkened, his hand moving to her waist, pulling her closer. I don't need to claim you, YN. You're already mine. YN's pulse quickened as his lips finally crashed against hers in a heated kiss. The passion and frustration that had been building between them for months, now spilling over in a rush of desire. She kissed him back, her hands finding their way to his hair, tugging him closer, feeling the heat of his body against hers. As the kiss broke, Jungkook's grip on her waist loosened slightly, but he didn't move away, his forehead still resting against hers. The tension in the air was electric, but there was also a sense of calm between them. Now, and knowing that things had shifted, the teasing, the rivalry, everything had brought them to this point. Jungkook's hands were still on her, but there was an unmistakable tenderness in his touch now, a stark contrast to his usual cocky demeanor. His voice was almost too soft as he spoke, his breath warm against her skin. You really have no idea what you do to me, do you? YN raised an eyebrow, a playful smile tugging at her lips. Oh? I think I do, she teased, pressing herself even closer to him, feeling the way his body stiffened at the proximity. Jungkook let out a frustrated, almost helpless sigh, his hands sliding from her waist to her back, pulling her closer. I hate how much I want you, YN, he admitted, his tone low and filled with frustration. You drive me insane. But damn, I'd be a fool to fight it anymore. YN's lips curved into a mischievous grin as she tilted her head slightly, looking up at him through her lashes. You're so whipped, she teased, her voice playful but laced with affection. You've been whipped for me the whole time, haven't you? Jungkook's eyes darkened, but there was no anger in his gaze, just the raw, unmistakable emotion that had always been lurking beneath the surface. He took a deep breath, his hands gently cupping her face, his thumb brushing across her lips. Maybe, he muttered, almost defensively. But you don't make it easy, princess. YN laughed softly, her fingers trailing along the collar of his hoodie, enjoying the way his breath hitched at her touch. I know, she replied, her voice dripping with teasing affection. I like it that way. Jungkook groaned, shaking his head, but there was a smile tugging at his lips. You're impossible, he murmured, leaning down to kiss her again. But this time it was different, gentler, almost reverent, as if he couldn't get enough of her. YN kissed him back, smiling into the kiss as she felt his arms tighten around her, his body pressed against hers in a way that felt both possessive and deeply affectionate. There was no more rivalry, no more games. Just two people who had finally given in to what had been simmering between them all along. When they finally pulled away, Jungkook was breathless, his eyes filled with something YN couldn't quite name, but it was soft. And it was all for her. You're stuck with me now, he said quietly, his voice filled with conviction. YN smiled, her fingers brushing the side of his neck as she whispered, I'm not complaining.